Bill Shakir. Your team, our pizza, Picasso's. Order online today at Picasso'sPizza.net.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to this Trainwreck Sports Podcast, where we are here to pay the bills. I wish I was talking on a Victory Thursday, but alas, we are here to recap the Buffalo Bills season. So I'm joined by Mike Partham, Mike Bunt, the most dynamic Mike duo in the business. Guys, I wish we were here on better circumstances, but unless you were literally under a rock in this, anybody, like even if you are barely aware of football, I think you're aware of what happened Sunday. Kansas City Chiefs defeating the Buffalo Bills to move on to their third straight Super Bowl. All right, guys, I gave my thoughts immediately after Sunday. You guys have been patient, waited here. So I'm going to start with Mike Partham right here in the middle, and then we'll go to you, Bunt, and then I'll finish up. Just what went wrong Sunday? What in your estimation, you've had now about 4 days to sit with it, get your biggest narrative, whatever you think the biggest, if you want to do a blame pie type, whatever you want to do with it, what went wrong Sunday?
Where do we even start? I mean, how many touches did James Cook get on the final drive? Or even besides that one drive where they were gashing up the Chiefs up and down the field for a touchdown, he didn't really have a whole lot to do with this offense. I don't think Amari Cooper did get a few catches, but he wasn't as effective as I would like him to be. Obviously, Keon Coleman was not the contested catch receiver in this game that we needed him to be. Dalton Kincaid, let's not, not much more needs to be said. It's already been said across, multiple platforms and radio stations and what have you. Should I'm just going to play the clip because we're not going to play it for a while. I'm just going to vent about the overfishous jerk.
Hey, you overfishous jerk!
All right, so we know about the Kincaid and the Allen plays that should have gotten a first down 1-2. We know about the contested catch, the essentially Hail Mary 2 that should have been an incomplete pass. It was only going to be a matter of field position because the Bills had a defensive penalty on them, whatever. Guys, did you notice throughout this game on at least 2, maybe 3 occasions, and I haven't gone back and rewatched the game, so maybe I'm mistaken on this, but there might have been at least a couple of occasions where Bills players would run to the sticks, maybe out of bounds, maybe in the middle of the field, and it looked like they ran out right where the first down marker was, and the broadcast themselves would put up on the screen 1st and 10, and then the refs would spot the ball just a little bit short of that marker, and they'd say, oh, well, I guess it's actually 2nd and 1. Did anybody else notice that throughout the course of the game? Because I feel like it was just me.
No, there were a couple of those calls, even beyond the very controversial ones that I was
right. And
to be moved.
One more I just want to point out is we all saw the clock ticking down to the 2-minute warning at the end of the first half, where the play clock was like a second, at least a half a second, maybe a full second ahead of where the clock was going down to the 2-minute warning, and they just let the play clock go down to 0 with 1 second on the clock before the 2-minute warning. And we're all just sitting at home. I know what they usually do with the play clock as far as delay games, where they look at the clock, they let it go down to 0, and then they glance over at the ball, and they give it like maybe a half a beat before they throw a flag for a penalty. Maybe it's like in a basketball where it's 0 point something, and you have to let the 2 decimal points, after the point, go to 0 before the buzzer sounds, and if you've gotten the shot off or not. But I'm not conspiracy theory guy. I don't think that the NFL is rigging it for the Chiefs. I think that the officials are just that incompetent. But to have this kind of consistency, we were talking about the Warren Sharp, details that he was giving out about the Chiefs calls in playoff games, and how many more times the Chiefs opponents have had calls in their playoff games. And it's just a staggering amount, much more so than other teams have had. And you say, well, the Chiefs play a lot at home, so they favor home teams. Well, if I'm not mistaken, Clete Blakeman coming into this game was not an official that usually favored home teams. And the Chiefs, he was one of the guys that the Chiefs actually didn't have a winning record when he called their games or at least not as favorable of a record.
Yeah, I think it was 6-5 or something.
Yeah, we came in thinking, okay, they got the right ref for this job. There was some speculation that they may even favor the Bills just to kill this narrative that the referees are favoring the Chiefs. And look what happened up and down the board. But I just wanted to put that out. I just wanted to vent about that, and now we're going to put it off to the side. The defense just stayed in man too much. Obviously, having to rely on Kyrie Elam instead of Christian Benford, and Elam, just getting smoked left and right by Xavier Worthy, of course, of all people, just to stick the knife in our backs a little bit further. The pass rush, with the exception of maybe Ed Oliver for once actually showing up in a playoff game, was very ineffective. Groot in particular, maybe Von Miller popped up for one play. Was he involved in a fumble? I forget.
He only had like 16 snaps or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, so what is he worth at that point? I up and down the board, I think there's a lot we're looking at in this offseason without getting into too big of a offseason preview, because that'll be maybe later in the show, and obviously down the road we'll have shows in this offseason where we'll talk about what we want the Bills to prioritize as far as free agents and draft picks go. But my leaderboard is receiver, quarterback, safety.
So I got a lot of thoughts on this game right now, and there's been a lot of talk. Who to blame? Who should it be? The refs? Should it be the Bills' defense? Should it be their offense? I'm of the side and of the opinion right now, you just have to give credit to the Chiefs' greatness. Kansas City has won these type of games the entire season. This is what they do. Everybody all year wanted to say Kansas City is lucky that they play down to their competition, that they're not going to be able to sustain this in the playoffs. Well, guess what? They are sustaining it. They've won something like 22 of their last 23 games when their starters are playing. And I guarantee you, like 15 of them have probably looked like this. The fact of it is, we had to start acknowledging that the regular season doesn't mean anything to Kansas City. It doesn't. Yep. They don't show their cards in the regular season.
Well, that's something that we're speculated on, and we've heard from players on both sides, especially on the Bills side, saying, "Well, we haven't seen this play out of that formation before out of the Chiefs all season." So we were speculating, well, are the Chiefs holding back certain things? Are the Chiefs holding back certain plays? And you know what?
They are.
And from the feedback from the players, they are. This is not a conspiracy. It is the truth.
And this is what I've been saying for like 2 years now. Like 2-3 years I've been saying this, and people keep falling for the regular season bull crap every single time. It's like, I know I can kind of sound condescending at times, but when are people going to wake up and realize this is what the Chiefs are? Like, there's a lot of stupid talk around these Bills-Chiefs games. People want to scapegoat coaches. They want to scapegoat the defense. They want to scapegoat everybody. Here's what it ultimately comes down to. The margins of error in the playoffs are extremely minimal when you're playing the best of the best. When the Bills play the Broncos in the playoffs, they look like the Buffalo Bills. When the Bills play the Ravens in the playoffs, still able to get a win and hold the best offense in football in the regular season to 25 points. So why does the defense always come apart against Kansas City? It's pretty simple. First of all, the Chiefs have a future Hall of Fame quarterback who's maybe the GOAT right now, on path to be the greatest of all time. But then when you're holding back in the regular season, what do? They let the Bills show their cards in their regular season matchup. The Bills win the game. And then in the playoffs, the Chiefs flip the sheet and they show things the Bills have never seen. That's why the Bills allow 30 points every time they play the Chiefs in the playoffs, because the Chiefs have a strategy in place that the Bills aren't prepared for. And everybody's like, well, if the Chiefs offense is so good, why don't they do that against Houston? Why don't they do that against this team or that team? It comes down to a very, very simple answer, and Bills fans aren't going to like it. The reason why the Chiefs go off against the Bills defense in the playoffs isn't that the Bills defense isn't good. It's that the Chiefs know the Bills are capable of going toe-to-toe in a shootout against them, while teams like Houston and several other offenses in the league can't. So when the Chiefs are going up against lesser opponents in the playoffs or the regular season, they are not showing their cards. they're comfortable winning a game 24-17. Why? Because at the end of the day, it's a win, and they get to keep things from getting out there that they can use at a later time. When the Bills go up against them, all of that stuff that they've been hiding all season comes out. And then the Chiefs look like some dynasty, because that's what the Chiefs are capable of doing on any given week. But why would you expose yourself? Why would you show your hand and then lose? This is what hurts the Bills. Who did the Bills go up against before the Chiefs? Baltimore. The Bills weren't going to beat the Ravens without going all out and putting everything out there. What did the Bills do against the Ravens that they hadn't done much in the regular season? Josh runs, base defense, man-to-man. Well, no, it would have been nice if the Bills were playing Pittsburgh in the second round, if they could have just done what they've done the whole season. Play zone, do your normal stuff. And then know what happens when you go up against Kansas City? You have some cards to play that they're not prepared for. The whole like, oh, we're getting out coached. Yes, we're getting out coached. Kansas City just had to beat Houston, and they had an easy path to the AFC Championship. The Bills had to have a game of their lives just to get to the AFC Championship. It's complicated. It's hard. And these margins of error are razor thin. And then on top of it, you're talking about going up against a team that doesn't make many mistakes of their own. Kansas City will not beat themselves most of the time. You were lucky to get the one takeaway. And then on top of it, these 50-50 calls go their favor most of the time. So you're going up against maybe the greatest dynasty of all time. You're not getting 50-50 calls to go your way. And they're not showing their hand to you while you just showed your hand to them the week before. That makes it really, really difficult. So what does it ultimately come down to? That they can change. There's nothing they can change. There's nothing they can do this offseason that will guarantee that they will convert next year in the playoffs at this moment. Yeah, they can get better receivers. They can improve the defensive line. They can get better corners. But you cannot tell me if it's the AFC Championship game in this same situation and they have slightly better receivers, slightly better corners, slightly better D-line, that you're suddenly going to feel slightly better about their odds of converting when it matters the most. Because at the end of the day, we're getting out coached. I love McDermott, but you're not going to get someone better than McDermott. So you can say you're getting out coached, but you're not getting somebody better. Our drafting has been good, but it hasn't been great. Our defense is getting abused, but they did get the stop to hold them for a field goal on the second to last drive. And then our offense, while it was good, the margins of error are slim, like I said. You go 3 and out to open the game and almost throw 2 interceptions. You have Curtis Samuel wide open for what can be a 30-yard game. You don't get him. You end up punting. You get stopped on a 4th and inches, whether or not it was the right call by the refs or not. You get stopped, turns it over. And then you get the ball down 3 points with a couple minutes left in the game. And for the second straight year, down 3 points with the ball in the hands of your elite quarterback, your elite offense that scored 30 points a game this year and 26 points a game last year, you can't even tie it up. At some point, we have to realize this team does not step up to the occasion to finish these games that are winnable. And you can say coaching, you can say defense, you can say the refs, you can say the offense in the final moment. The fact of it is, all of those things went wrong and they still lost the game by 3 points. And they had over 2 2-point conversions. Kansas City went 1 for 1. They had this game to be won. They just needed somebody, one person, to step up at any moment in the game. And they unfortunately didn't have it. I won't even say Josh Allen had an A+ game. He had a good game. Maybe that game beats 70, 80% of the league. That was a B performance for him. That was a B performance. If Josh Allen had an A performance, they win the game. If the defense is able to come up with one more stop, they win the game. Nobody did their one extra thing that they needed to finish the game.
Mike Lombardi. What's up, Mike?
All right, so I have a proposal for you. I threw this out on Twitter at the morning show, guys. I don't know if they decided it wasn't worth playing around with, but they have this segment called "Let's Get Stupid," where you can just propose the most radical idea, and because you're saying, well, it sounds stupid anyway, it can't be held against you. So whoever's watching, don't freak out. Don't start adding me like I'm proposing such a radical change. But I had this thought in my head, because anybody that's anti-McDermott or tired of McDermott is saying we need to move on from McDermott. And the constant and very fair question is, okay, who are we going to get to replace him? I have a name for you. Steve Spagnuolo. Because you're moving from a defensive guru, supposedly, to a defensive madman genius who has been the thorn in the Bills' side for more than a few years, countering the Bills' offense, countering Josh Allen with these, crazy blitzes. And even though the margins are razor thin, he's been coming out on top. Now, of course, there are multiple reasons for the Chiefs' success. Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Kelsey in his prime, Chris Jones in more recent years, et cetera, et cetera. But Steve Spagnuolo is one of those reasons, and we can get him out of the way while getting a fresh face in the coaching position. And now he's got the inside knowledge on the Chiefs' defensive personnel and going up against Mahomes and the offense on a near weekly basis in practice. So I put it to you, Bunt, first. How do you like that idea?
Quick, and then I'll hand it to Jake. You know what? I understand the logic to what you're saying, but I really have a problem when people say that Steve Spagnuolo is a defensive genius and that what he did on Sunday was amazing. But then at the same time, the same people will say that Sean McDermott and the Bills defense was horrendous, because the stats were identical. The Chiefs ran for less yards per carry. They had less total yards. You know what the difference between the Chiefs and the Bills were in this game? The Bills defense held the Chiefs to a field goal in the final stretch, and the Chiefs defense forces a bad pass and they hold the Bills to nothing in the last offensive series. That's the only difference. The Bills, if they don't go for the 2-point conversions, they end up getting 31, 32 points in this game and nearly 400 yards. You look at Steve Spagnuolo versus Sean McDermott in their defensive rankings the last 6 years, the Bills are better than the Chiefs in most of these categories. So it's not that Steve Spagnuolo is a better defensive mind than Sean McDermott. It's that the Chiefs, they ultimately get timely stops. But if the Bills go out and get a touchdown on their final drive, we're not talking about the Bills defense right now. We'd be talking about how they got a stop on the last Chiefs possession of the game to set up a game-winning touchdown. That's the problem I have right now, because we can't have it both ways. We can't just be like, oh, it's all the defense's fault. Yes, the defense has been horrible. They were horrible. They got abused. But Tom Brady, with 2 minutes left, down a field goal, wins the game. And then he does it again the next time. That's what he did the first 2 times he was in the Super Bowl. Game-winning field goals to end games. We can't even get a field goal to tie a game, in that moment. So what are we talking about? That's something I struggle with. And then the other part I struggle with too is the whole situation at the line of scrimmage. Ryan Fitzpatrick and Dan Orlovsky, they've been forgiving to Josh. They said it's confusing, it's tough, you're guessing, so you can't really predict it. But there's other offensive linemen that have played in the NFL that have said Josh should have read what the Chiefs defense was doing and had them in a better protection. So,
did you see where there was a computer simulation that couldn't even predict that the way the blitz was
the Amazon model didn't pick up the blitz.
4th and 5. Why were you in 4th and 5 to begin with? Because
this is what I was just going to say. No. And this is my biggest issue with you're asking one play. If you had to ask me one play that cost the Bills this game, it is third and 10 on this exact drive, and they throw a screen pass to Amari Cooper, who is one of the slowest starting receivers, number 1 receivers in football. That is not his strength. Last year in this scenario, I believe, if I remember correctly, because I don't go back and watch these games, I don't torture myself like that. I believe in a similar scenario threw a bubble screen to Shakir. So I was going to say
Shakir's much more better for those type of screens.
And so I understand why you throw it to Cooper because they're expecting it to Shakir, whatever. It's a dumbass play call on third and 10 to play for a 4th and 5 one-play situation.
Yards per pass did a breakdown. Karlaftis made an amazing play, recognizing it and coming back, yards per pass, literally tweeted this out afterwards. If Karlaftis didn't have the awareness to come back, Cooper would have had a chance to break it for a touchdown.
I don't care, Mike. A screen call on 3rd and 10 is not
this all season, Jake.
But not to Amari Cooper. Not to Amari Cooper.
But they've been doing these receiver screens all season, and they've had success.
They've been having success with it to Khalil Shakir, who has proven to be one of the best receivers for yards after contact.
In that moment, they're not thinking first down.
That's my problem. That's my problem with the play call.
This is what they've been doing. This has been their strategy all year.
Like, but you're at the situation where you are not getting these 4 downs.
I'm saying this as someone that has friends that are in like college football coaches, like on the offensive side of the ball. In that moment, they're facing cover 0 on 3rd and 10, and they realize they are about to get blitzed the shit out of. They are going to have no time to get rid of the ball, and they're not thinking right now. They're not thinking we need 10 yards to go. They're thinking we need to get 5 to 6 yards, or else it is 4th and 10, and we're going to have.
Then why are you throwing to your slowest receiver? Then you're using the personnel wrong on the play.
We can criticize who they threw it to, but
that's what I'm criticizing.
The actual play
as much as anything, that's what I'm criticizing.
The actual play call makes sense. And the other thing that we need to accept as Bills fans too, and this does not get discussed enough when we put blame instantly on offensive coordinators. Quarterbacks and offensive coordinators are scheming together. Yes, the offensive coordinator is the one that puts most of the plays together, but the quarterback is telling the offensive coordinator what plays he wants to run on a weekly basis. Josh Allen is as big of a part in what plays they're running and deciding to do in big moments as Joe Brady is. And everybody just acts like it's just the head coach. It is Josh Allen too. Like, people just want to forget that he has input. He's a franchise quarterback, and he is part of the decision-making process in that moment. And what it comes down to is they didn't execute. If Spencer Brown is able to hold on to Karlaftis a little bit longer, if Karlaftis doesn't make an amazing play coming back, Cooper gets extra yards. If he doesn't stumble a little bit, he gets the first down. Part of it could be even the element of Cooper hasn't been getting the ball much. It might be a surprise if he gets it here. He's big. He's physical. Maybe he'll carry a defender for an extra couple yards. There is so much more that goes into it. They're not just picking the stuff at random. They're doing it based off of what
I know they're not picking the stuff at random. Like, I still hate the play call. You can tell you what you want.
But a lot of hating a play call is hindsight. You hate it because it didn't
work. No. It was not hindsight. I said it as at the moment. I hate that call. I hate the play.
But Jake, the reason I don't like that is hindsight. The beginning of the year, nobody liked the wide receiver screens to Khalil Shakir. But then they started realizing, oh my God, they work. People didn't like Mac Hollins.
They work, then you should lean on it when you need it in the best moment of your season.
But the opposite is true oftentimes too. When people know your tendencies and who you're going to go to in big moments, that's what they're going to target. That's what they're going to defend. It's why a lot of big-time players, when they get the ball in basketball in the final 5 seconds, they don't make the shot. They don't convert. Why? Because you're getting double-teamed. Because teams know your tendencies and what you're likely to do. And Kansas City is the best of the best and knowing what you're going to do in a big time moment.
I think they outsmarted themselves on it. That's what I think. I think going to Cooper on that play is
I think it allows a bigger problem that the Bills have actually had all season. We haven't really seen it or discussed it yet. I think the Bills need a deep receiver, a deep separator downfield. That they
all right. So before we get into what's next,
they have contested catch guys. They have middle of the field guys. But they don't have a deep ball receiver. They haven't had one since they've had to let go of Diggs for personal reasons.
Before we get into what's next, let me get into what went wrong.
Let me just get these stats from Sneaky Joe. He's from the morning show, just to illustrate how the Bills have been doing with deep balls. The Bills actually saw 2 high safety looks, cover 2, on just 32.6% of their dropbacks. That's the third lowest rate in the league. And only 51% of Josh Allen's air yards this season were deemed catchable. That ranks 31st in the NFL. And Allen was second in the NFL in deep ball attempts, but 26th in completion percentage on those attempts. So it's not a matter of, in maybe the last couple of years, they've been playing cover 2 shell and maybe even cover 3 to take away the deep ball and dare Josh to, make shorter throws and make the easy throws. Now they're daring him to make the long throws, and whether we've noticed that all season, he just hasn't been either attempting them or connecting on them, partially because I don't think he has the receiver personnel in order to do that anymore.
But we knew that, we'll get into that later, but we knew that was going to be the case going into the year because of what their situation was cap-wise last year. It's hard when you fall short in the AFC Championship and you see what things cost you. It's easy to say, well, they didn't have this, they didn't have that. Well, we knew they didn't have a lot of this going into the year. It was a reset year. They lost some of their best players. Know what they could have used on the field on Sunday? Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs might have been the difference in them winning or losing that game on Sunday. But guess what? If they had Stephon Diggs, they never would have gone through the cultural change in the locker room, and they're probably not winning 13 games in the regular season. So, yes, there's a lot of things that I wish the Bills had, but the salary cap situation was why they didn't have the opportunity to do any of that. But, Jake, if you can continue, we'll get back to that point.
Yeah, let's get to. I just want to get in my piece here on what went wrong. Go to that, and then we can go to what's next, because it isn't. I say that's the one moment that, if I had to pick one thing, that one thing that I was the most angry about, that's what it was. This game was not about one moment, as you both have said. This was a failure across the board. It was a B+ effort when they need an A+ effort to beat this team, and we talked about it weeks up into this. I kept saying to you guys, leave no doubt. That's why I picked a win by almost 10 points. Why I picked them to be up by 2 possessions, because I thought that the game script, I thought that they knew what the game script had to be, and that the game script had to be to dominate this team as much as you can, to not give them a chance to be there late. And I think the opportunities were there the whole time to do it. And you have Mike Lombardi calls it a 60-minute player. You had a lot of 50-minute players in this game, and that's why your criticism of Josh is perfectly fair. It's not just Brady in this game, because Josh was asleep the first 10 minutes, and he could have been better. I'm sure that he would say that he wanted plays back on that last drive as well. So it's not just Brady, it's not just Allen, it's not just a defense. Sean McDermott said today he thought that they won in the trenches a lot of games this year. That was my most biggest reason to be confident going into this game on Sunday. They lost in the trenches on both sides of the ball this year. They got bullied by a Kansas City team. So that's a reason you lose this game. It was failures across the board. I think if we want to point to one big thing in this game, losing Christian Benford, who was bar none of top 5 cornerback in football this year, was no small loss. And specifically, not just losing him, but not even a replacement level player entering in the game, just a bad NFL player who was not prepared for the moment at all, coming in his place affected everything, because immediately the Chiefs see him and it's like a wounded dog. They're going to go after him. It's exactly what they did. So I think if you want to blame one thing specifically on this game, that's what it can come down to. Benford's loss is so huge for what he does the defense, in accordance with Rapp being out in that game too. Those are two just huge losses. But Mike, the biggest thing, and Mike, you mentioned it a little bit. You both have mentioned it, but Bunt, you specifically mentioned it a little bit, and it's what I mentioned in the preview last week when we were on this show. I said the biggest worry going into the Ravens game was that they didn't have enough talent, and then they won and they figured it out. The biggest worry going into this game was never the talent mass. We knew that they could match up to them. It was, can they get over the mental hurdle? And they couldn't. Because this you got to play, like we've talked about, and like you've said, Mike, you got to play perfect against Kansas City. A B+ game isn't perfect. And that's what it comes down to. And that's why everybody's so hurt by this one, because there isn't. You can't just blame Sean McDermott. You can't just blame Tyler Bass. You can't blame Josh Allen for laddering a football in a crazy moment. You can't blame 1, 2, 3 thing. It's a culmination of failures across the board for a team that should have been more ready for that, or you would at least think so.
How much do we make of the fact that the ineffective players were, a lot of them were first-round picks, or Keon Coleman counts as a very early second-round pick. Groot was basically a no-show. Elam, of course, was subpar. Dalton Kincaid just had a follow-up season, and they're saying, well, he had injuries this whole season. He had fluid in his kneecap. Well, why wasn't he showing up in the injury report? Did we ever get an answer to that? And of course, Keon Coleman, basically 3 catches the entire playoffs for 22 yards combined.
You know what, though? What the tough part is, and they're picking at the end of the first round every year. they're not picking the blue chippers.
The Chiefs had Xavier Worthy, and of course we were making a big deal out of
Xavier
the
Worthy
fact that we
is
traded
really-
with it. Xavier
but
Worthy had more catches and yards
Mike,
in this game than
Mike,
Keon Coleman had combined in
Mike,
the playoffs.
Did you watch Xavier Worthy this year? He wasn't a dynamic, unbelievable player.
And they found a way to use him.
He had a big game in a big moment, so you're thinking that he's incredible. He had 4 plays over like 20 yards, 4 catches over 20 yards, like the whole regular season. Like it isn't. The Chiefs are great at drafting. Like they are great at drafting and utilizing guys. But when you are drafting late in the first round, year after year after year after year after year, you are going to have a talent deficit compared to other teams.
But don't the Chiefs draft late anyway?
Most teams that are consistently picking in the late 20s, they normally have a star quarterback and they normally lack talent in other areas. The Bills have a bunch of good players. They don't have game records.
Agreed.
The Chiefs have hit on some game records, but let's not act like every other team in the NFL that is picking from 25 to 32 is hitting on game records, because they're not. They're drafting like Brandon Beane, or not even at the level of Brandon Beane. The Bills are in this situation right now because they have a bunch of good guys, but they don't have great guys. And Keon, Dalton, like you could go on and on. A lot of those guys, they're serviceable pros. They're going to be fine. Where the Bills have gotten in trouble over the years is that they have spent big money on certain people. They have given up assets at times for certain people, and that reduced their salary cap to the point where they haven't been able to fill holes on their roster with the type of replacement level players that they need. When you give Von Miller a 6-year, $120 million contract, that looks great at the time when you're trying to win a Super Bowl. It hurts you down the line. When you trade for Stephon Diggs and then you give up, you eat all of his dead cap money, that hurts you. When you get rid of all the veterans that they got last year, that hurts you. This was a reset transition year. That's why all the analysts picked the Bills to finish second or third in the AFC East. What did we say? It's not a reset year. It's going to be a transition. They're going to have some struggles, but they're still going to be really good because they have Josh Allen. But we can't forget, they're playing with Taylor Rapp and DeMar Hamlin at safety. Like they're playing, like everybody wants to talk about how good Terrell Bernard is, and he is a good player. Do you know what his PFF grade is? It's under a 50. He was one of the worst ranked. He was one of the worst graded linebackers in all of NFL, according to PFF. Our defensive line, everybody before the year thought they were great. Where were they? Where are they whenever it matters? The point of it is the Bills roster is essentially this: star quarterback, good offensive line, mediocrity throughout. They need to patch
good
up.
Running backs.
They need good running backs. But the point of the story is Kansas City has not only been better at coaching up their talent, but they have been better at developing, and they also have an offensive genius. They have a great defensive coordinator that's never going to leave because of his age, and he's a retread. And they have maybe arguably the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL. We are watching greatness at this moment. And I know Bills fans are going to say this is a loser mentality. They are going to their 5th Super Bowl in 6 years. And if you want to count Mahomes' entire year, 5th in 7 years. The only 2 times they haven't gone to the Super Bowl was when they lost in overtime to the Patriots, who were the best dynasty in NFL history before them, because they didn't get the ball in overtime of the AFC Championship, and they had all the momentum. And then the other loss was also in overtime because they blew like a 17-point lead against the Bengals. Like, this Chiefs team conceivably could be in 7 consecutive Super Bowls. They are the best dynasty we have ever seen in the 100-plus year history of the NFL. And honestly, they're the only thing that has prevented, really, the Bills from winning 2 Super Bowls in the last 5 years. Because if the Bills would have won a couple of those games against KC, it would be the Bills that would have a dynasty right now, possibly. Like, we keep talking like, oh, we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to do this. No, it's not what we need to do. We need somebody to knock Kansas City out before we play them in the playoffs. We need to execute.
If we can't knock out Kansas City, then who can?
Since he did it
That's
once,
the point we're at. Yeah.
that's the point. That is the point.
On
If
luck,
we
on
can't
overtime
do
luck.
it, if we can't do it, who the hell is going to do it? Baltimore had their chance at home last year too. They didn't do it. Cincinnati had a chance after the first time. They couldn't do it the second time. The point of it is this. The Patriots dynasty was amazing, but they went to 3 Super Bowls in 4 years. The Chiefs are at 5 and 6, and Mahomes is 29 years old. They might end up going to 12, 13 Super Bowls when this is all said and done if they keep this up. Like the point of this is we need to stop thinking this is a Bills problem. This is an NFL problem.
Yes.
If the Bills played in the NFC, they would have gone to 3 of the last 5. Know what that would make them? The San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers have gone to 2. They lose.
Probably the Eagles.
Yeah.
too.
If the
Yeah.
Eagles lose in this one, what are we going to say? Are we going to say, well, the Bills are 0-4 against Kansas City, but you know what? Look at the NFC. The Eagles are 0-2. The 49ers are 0-2. If the Eagles lose this, we got to just start accepting. It is what it is.
If you can't start accepting that the team that's won 3 straight Super Bowls just has everybody's number, then I don't know what sport you're watching at this point, because this has happened. This has happened to a lot of teams in sports history, where you run up against dynasties and teams try to make a lot of panic moves to try to keep pace with said dynasty. And the theme from One Bills Drive today was just stay really good and keep knocking on the door. Like, that was McDermott and Bean. They're like, we don't think there's any reason to blow this up, any reason to do this thing. No one else is getting as close to beat this team as the Bills are. And that's no solace for us as Bills fans. It's not going to reward us, but it's just the fact of, like,
We're the only one that has. We're the only ones that have beat them in the last 22 games. And then we lose by 3. Like Bills fans right now are in panic mode. You know why we're in panic mode? Because we're 0-4.
Oh, I'm not
it's
in panic
0-4.
I don't know about
Not you.
that.
Not you.
Okay.
But you know, Bills fans are in panic mode because it's 0-4. This is like the 90s, but in the 90s we ended in the Super Bowl. Let's be real. The AFC sucked in the 90s when the Bills went to Super Bowls. This team versus that team, they're comparable, if not better, overall. The difference being the Bills in the 90s capitalized off of a weak conference. This team in Bills history is going up against a juggernaut that the league has never seen. And we're the closest team in the league to their level. And yet, because we can't get past them, we're going to hold it against them. It's this thought process that if you don't win championships, you're not amongst the best of the best. If you don't get to the Super Bowl, you're not among the best of the best. I hate to break it to football fans. Just because San Fran and the Eagles have made it to 2 Super Bowls the last 6 years doesn't mean that San Fran or Philly are better teams than what the Buffalo Bills are. And we have our mind set that that's what defines greatness. It's a bunch of crap. The Bills have been the second best team in football the last 5 years. They just can't get past the best team. And DVOA says that the Bills of the last 5 years are the greatest team in NFL history to not get to a Super Bowl during that span. You know who the second greatest team during a 5-year period to not go to a Super Bowl is? The Baltimore Ravens of the last 5 years. And guess what? They also have to deal with Kansas City. And you know what's a little bit even more frustrating for Ravens fans? They can't even get past Buffalo. So we can complain all we want. We're at least winning playoff games on a yearly basis. We just can't get past the Chiefs. The Ravens can't get past the Bills or the Chiefs. And you want to know something about the Bengals? They can't even make the playoffs with their star quarterback. So we can all complain, but we're complaining because we are so close to getting to that eternal glory. But for whatever reason, we can't make those 1 to 2 plays when it matters to win the game. And that's why I keep saying it is collectively as a team something that they need to work on, because this is not 1 to 2 players. This is not a coaching decision. This is not a call by the refs. This is a collective team thing that they need to fix. And that's what Brandon Beane is basically telling you. That is what Sean McDermott is telling you. They are telling you, we like our team. We know how close we are compared to the rest of the league. We just need to execute next time. And fans are going to be like, well, it's the definition of insanity, repeating the same thing with the same results. It's not the same results. They have fallen short different ways each time. They adjust, they evolve, they learn from it. They just have to stop finding millions of new ways to lose these tragic games because they are not losing them the same way,
And
regardless of what people want to say.
You know what helps eliminate the margin of error too, and something else they mentioned today, Sean McDermott mentioned, you need at least 2 to 3 players in the top 5 of your position on either side of the ball. And they don't have that. At some point, you can scheme, you can do whatever, and Josh Allen can lift you up. At some point in football, it turns into one simple thing from any level. It is about Jimmys and Joes. And the Bills don't have that. The All-Pro rating said it. The Pro Bowl said it. Everybody has said it. That is your task. If we're talking about what's next, and Mike, I'm going to let you jump in, and then we'll finish up on our little preview on what we want from the offseason. Jimmys and Joes, man. Go get like the blue chip ratio in college football that determines basically every national champion. You have to be over a certain scenario. That's not a similar thing in the NFL, but that's going to help you close the margin on KC. If you got better players, and the Von Miller thing, you mentioned Von earlier. 8 weeks through before the injury, it looked like a genius move. He had 8 sacks in 8 weeks. That was the swing. That was the move. That was your blue chipper to go across from Josh Allen. We know what happened with Von since then. So they know that that's what they have to do. They've been hamstrung by it. They have an opportunity to make it right. That's why this offseason is, honestly, I think this offseason is the most crucial of the Brandon Beane era, without a doubt, going into this single offseason with the cap space that they're going to get and the situation we're in with this team and the 3 picks in the top 50 or whatever it's going to end up, top 60. Huge opportunity. So go ahead, Partham. What were you going to jump in with?
Speaking of the definition of insanity and speaking of DVO rankings for the Bills, I heard that the Bills have had a 28th ranked DVOA special teams, and yet the McBean is basically giving the vote of confidence to Smiley, whatever his name is. What can somebody explain to me why they're sticking with Smiley? We even thought last year he should have been out as special teams coach.
I'll tell you a simple answer. It's because they think that he knows what he's doing, that he's qualified, and that he'll have a bounce back year. When he first came to Buffalo, their DVOA and special teams was near the top of the league. And McDermott, he values the people that have loyalty and that provide to the culture of the organization. And here's the thing about football. I'm with you. I feel like Matthew Smiley should be gone after what took place special teams this season. But at the end of the day, you also need the right collection of talent, and you need players to do what they're told. I could see every reason for moving on from him. But there's also something to be said that it is one bad season, and that you don't really evaluate coaches based on 1 year. You evaluate them based on the totality of their work, and that McDermott maybe has a higher opinion of him based on other years in Buffalo.
But weren't we criticizing the whole special teams unit last season too? I don't have the exact numbers for last season in front of me at the moment, but I'm pretty sure that there were calls for that we should move on from Smiley last season, before this season even.
There's always going to be calls, but we don't know the actual strategy. You could have great strategy. You could know what you're doing. You could be coaching up people the right way, and then players don't always have to be executing properly. I agree that I would probably move on from Smiley, but what happens behind closed doors is sometimes different than what happens on the field. There's been great NFL head coaches in the history of the league that people thought were failures early in their career or at other parts of their career. Bill Belichick was fired from Cleveland. He made the playoffs once in like 5 years. Turns out to be the greatest head coach in NFL history. Andy Reid moved on from Philly. Like, we don't always know what these coaches know and what their actual genius or strategy is. We just see what happens on the field. And it's possible that McDermott doesn't think that all the blame for the special teams failures is on the coordinator. And maybe he has reasons that back it up. Maybe he doesn't. That's the hardest thing about being fans. We are not at practice. We are not behind closed doors. We do not know what is going on with the culture. And I'll tell you, as someone that covers UB football and has covered other D1 football, including Ohio State, what happens on that practice field and behind closed doors is way more important to the decision making than most things that happen on Sunday or Saturday. And we only see that 3 hours of it. And unfortunately, like that's what makes a lot of decisions for people. But there's a lot that we don't see that goes into what goes down.
I think the short answer for me, that's a great point, Mike. I think it's in name of continuity as much as anything. They like the vibe they had from this team this year. Maybe the result didn't play out, but they like the process and want to stick with the vibes that they had going into this year. I also think that a lot of their issues were on kickoff coverage, and I think it's fair to give the guy a chance in the offseason to kind of figure out how to cover these kickoffs, because it was a new rule, and a lot of teams I think the kickoff returns were like up by like 60% or something I saw today. So it was clearly something that was a changing dynamic throughout the year. I don't love it, but I see it in the name of continuity for a team that they were very, like, being a McDermott, they were very happy with the season. It was like, we're disappointed in the result, but we're very excited for the foundation we have. We thought this was going to be a year that was kind of light. So the fact that we got to this point, we're even more excited. That's where I was very quickly after this. Like, you're right, Steve. Steve especially knows everything. We're all locked in. We got it all unlocked. But there is the reasons to be optimistic. And I think even from the special team side, if they improve the talent on this roster, it helps the special teams unit because better players are going to be playing special teams. That's part of the reason the special teams is so bad this year. You're missing 70 million guys, and a lot of those are lower end guys who are going to be your special teams aces.
And who did they get rid of in recent years? Siren Neal. Like there's a
Matakevich last year.
Yes, they got rid of a lot of the guys that were their special teams aces. And you know what's funny? When they're paying a guy $3 million for special teams, what do the fans say? You're paying that guy $3 million. Why don't you give that to a receiver? But then when the special teams allows a punt return because you don't have the right guy in the spot, oh, what are we doing? And that is what coaching understands. We don't have the guys right here. We're vulnerable. So, but then there's situations where a fake punt happens and you're just totally unprepared and you're like, okay, that's probably on the head coach. Like we should have, or special teams coordinator, we probably should have known this was coming or something. But it's tough, man. It's tough. And I guess the thing that I feel bad about, Jake and Mike, is that during the beginning of this run, where like the Bills have been elite, the Chiefs had already established themselves, but it was early on in the Chiefs, and they weren't yet a dynasty. And like it was fair to say, like, okay, they won a Super Bowl, they're really good, but they haven't gone through us at our best yet. And we're gonna have opportunities, and we're gonna be great for the next 10 to 15 years, and we're gonna see what they can handle. But then when you see them put this sustained success together and it's everything that you fear, they go to 5-6, you're 0-4 against them when it matters. You're now at that point where if it was a normal era of football, say Mahomes is 6 years older than Josh Allen, and at some point he's going to retire, like he's going to be gone. And then it's just going to be, you just got to get past Lamar and Burrow. Maybe Lamar's legs will slow down. You got to just get past Burrow. Like you're going to have that opportunity where there's a lesser team that you have to get past than the Chiefs. What is so scary about this Bills team right now, and I think this is why I don't have more answers on what to do, is Mahomes and Allen are going to be dueling with each other their entire careers. And at the same time, you're going to have Lamar and Burrow
and
there.
That dude's you know what the biggest thing you were talking about, giving the Chiefs credit. Can we just give Patrick Mahomes credit? Because I was watching them last week. I always watch the press conferences leading up to games. I like to study the body language, study these guys' answers, see what their vibe is, everything. And Josh was the same, very loose, whatever, going into the game. Mahomes looked like a fucking killer. Mahomes was so locked in. Like he was like even just in between answers looking at guys. And that's the thing with Mahomes is you want to talk about Mamba mentality, Michael Jordan-esque, whatever. It's the fact that Mahomes on that 3rd and 5, and the play call was great to P. Ryan to clinch that game at the end. But did you have any doubt, whatever the play call is, that Mahomes wasn't going to make that play? 0% chance. 0% chance. Yeah. And that's the thing that Josh Allen, that's what separates them. That is the thin margin, is in that had to have it moment. The play call was right.
About how Mahomes used his legs in this game. When do you ever see Mahomes use his legs in the regular season?
They held that back too.
Yeah.
But then in the playoffs, Mahomes uses his legs. And this is the thing that I hate acknowledging it, but it's the truth. If Mahomes wanted to be, he could be a top 3 to 5 mobile quarterback in the NFL. He could be just as good of a runner in many aspects as Josh. In fact, if you go back to college performances, college numbers, and the type of quarterbacks they were, Mahomes' mobility stats are actually like just right there with Josh. The difference is since he's been an NFL quarterback, Mahomes has relied on his arm and then letting his playmakers do things with the ball in their hands. Josh has been the opposite, where he is focused more on his legs. But what did the Chiefs do routinely against the Bills with Mahomes? Every time Rousseau broke contain, Mahomes took it for easy yardage. That touchdown run, he had 2 blockers that didn't even have anybody.
It was crazy.
They didn't even need to block anybody. Mahomes is very mobile, but he's smart because he knows he doesn't want to get hit. He doesn't need to take the hits. And I hate saying that. And when it's all said and done, Mahomes is going to be the greatest quarterback that ever played professional football. And it is what it is. He's already got 5 Super Bowls. He's got more Super Bowls than Jim Kelly did his entire career, and the guy's 29 years old. Like, Peyton Manning didn't even win a Super Bowl until I think it was 30. Pat Mahomes has has 5 Super Bowl appearances, and Mahomes and Manning hadn't even known what it was like to go to a Super Bowl at this point. So there is hope still that Josh Allen can figure it out. But at the end of the day, if you're a Bills fan and you're like, are we ever going to win one? What it really comes down to is this. The next time you're in that moment and you get the ball, and you're down or tied with a minute left, is the offense going to make the plays needed to win the game? Or is your defense going to come up with a stop to win the game when it matters the most? And the fact of it is this. Josh Allen's what, 28? He turns 29 this year. You probably got 5 more years of guaranteed Josh Allen being elite. He'll still have his legs for another couple years at least. Maybe they eventually reduce his running like they did this year. But you probably got at least 5 years of elite play. Hopefully, that's 7 to 10 years of high-level play. In the next 5 years, you need to make it to at least 1 or 2 Super Bowls to give yourself a little margin of error in case you don't win it the one time you do go. If the Bills want to win a Super Bowl, they have to find a way in basically the next 6 years to get past this Chiefs team. The tough part about it is you just had a 3-year period where they moved on from Tyreek Hill. This past year, last year, they didn't have much talent on offense. This year, no Rashee Rice. What the Chiefs have just done, if they win this Super Bowl, is found a way to three-peat during a period of time that they are going to have the worst playmakers that Mahomes will probably ever have in his NFL career. And as Xavier Worthy gets better, as Rashee Rice gets better, as Pacheco, it continues to be part of this. Yes, they'll lose Travis Kelce at some point. It's only going to get harder for the Bills when he has higher-end talent because the Chiefs' offense has been vulnerable the last 2 years. When they finally get it clicking again, I don't know what to say. The Bills are just going to have to take advantage next time they get this opportunity because I feel like they just wasted 2 shots at it.
And they did, but that's what it comes down to is they're as close as anybody else, and it comes down to these 3 to 5 moments in a game that they are getting completely outclassed on. It's not like they're even coming close in these smaller moments. They're getting destroyed in them. And you hope – here's the thing about this version of the Buffalo Bills, because everything you said about that Chiefs team is right. The one thing is that they've added defensively because they know Mahomes can elevate as much, but they also hit on the Rashee Rice thing is the biggest thing for me. I'm glad you brought him up because he was shaping up to be just on an incredible tear this year before the injury. We'll see how he comes back from it. But for the Bills' purposes of this build, a lot of as we talked about this being the reset year and last year letting go of a lot of guys who had been through all these playoff struggles and couldn't get over the hump. And now this is a team with a renewed sense. It's kind of like a fresh new vibe and everything. And, Allen and some of these guys have been there since 2020 and still been around, but a lot of it's new. A lot of it's new for them. Yeah, that's what happens. When you're a new team in these scenarios, you have to take the loss and learn how to win. And we thought, and I convinced myself of this too, that the Bills core and the coaching staff and Allen, that core had built up enough warts in losing to be ready in those moments. But this is still a relatively inexperienced team when it comes to these playoff moments, when you look at the core of the roster. And that's what came out when you're playing a team like Kansas City, who year after year has been there and has the confidence and wherewithal to pull through every single time in this scenario. It's Mount Mahomes. Like someone said, Mount Mahomes. It's true. It is a mountain to climb, and you can get that close in this, but you have to be perfect. And can the Bills be perfect? Yes, but they have to. The margins that we're going to talk about all summer, whether it be play calling, scheme, or just adding talent to the roster, all of it is needed to get over this, even if the 3-point loss looks closer than it needs to be. Then whatever.
You know why we never see this with Mahomes? Like, I mean, with other teams. I know the Brady's. I'll say one last point, and then I'll end it. I know we're going long.
Okay.
Outside of the Patriots, you don't ever see a great quarterback find this level so early in his career, while also matching him up with probably the greatest offensive schemer of all time. And normally what happens to great teams is they build up to that point. The Cowboys with Aikman, they built up to that. They had a 4-year run. They're amazing. But then they fall down off a cliff. Mahomes reached his greatness at such a young age that they've been able to build around him in a variety of different ways. And the dynasty started earlier than what it should. A lot of teams, after they have that buildup and they win a Super Bowl or a second Super Bowl, they become complacent. And then they don't put in all the work that's needed. And then the egos start going at each other. It's human nature. It's psychology. Things can only last for a certain amount of time. Even the Patriots had their fall from grace, where they didn't win a title for about a decade. They were really good. They were tough, but they didn't win one for a decade. Unless Andy Reid leaves, my fear is that Mahomes, and like, I'm not saying that Josh Allen isn't hungry, and I'm not saying that Mahomes is hungrier than Allen. Like, I think they're both equally hungry to win championships. I don't think we've ever seen a winner besides Tom Brady at this level that is as hungry as Mahomes is.
Agreed.
And that is what I think makes it hard, because you are seeing Chiefs players convincing themselves that Buffalo was disrespecting them and that fans were disrespecting them. They've literally won 3 Super Bowls, and they're still coming up with fucking reasons that they're being disrespected. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I think the only way Kansas City falls apart as a team is if they somehow, when Kelsey leaves or Reed retires, they become a little complacent, and the replacements for those two people are subpar. Like, I think Andy Reid, Hall of Fame coach, Mahomes, Hall of Fame quarterback, pair them together, almost unstoppable. But I think Andy Reid is in this for the long haul now. I mean,
he's 66, and Pete Carroll just got hired as a coach, and he's 70.
That's what I'm saying. So. I think at one point you would have thought, like, okay, Andy Reid finally won a Super Bowl. Maybe he wins one more. He retires. I think after Andy Reid won his second Super Bowl, he's like, let's get number 3. Now he's going for number 4. Now, you know what I think what Andy Reid is going for? He doesn't have
as many as he can rack up.
Like, and it's well documented. I'm not saying this as disrespectful, but he's had issues in his life with things happening. And to me, I have the takeaway that football is his life. You're seeing coaches coach later than ever before. 66 isn't retirement age anymore. 66 is, I got the greatest quarterback in NFL history. He could coach.
And I've got all the knowledge.
74. Like, honestly, at this point, I think he could tie Belichick for Super Bowls. And if he does that, he goes down as the greatest head coach in the history of the NFL. Because you know what Belichick didn't do that Reid has done? Belichick couldn't win without a Hall of Fame quarterback. He was a loser in Cleveland. He went 5-11 his first year in New England, won all these games with Brady, lost Brady, had one good season with Mac Jones, and then down here. What did Andy Reid do? 3 or 4 straight NFC Championship game appearances in Philly with McNabb. McNabb goes to Washington. He's a nobody. Goes to Kansas City, a Kansas City team that had been struggling. Like, mind you,
Mightily, yes.
like they were really bad for a period of time. Goes to Kansas City, turns them around, gets Alex Smith, and turns Alex Smith into the most productive seasons of his career. Yes, I know Smith won in Washington a little bit and that he won in San Fran. Alex Smith put up Pro Bowl numbers a little bit in KC. And then
they won the division and competing with, man.
Andy Reid is by far if he wins this Super Bowl and wins another one, I'm going to put him down as the best coach in the history of the NFL.
When I predicted this game, I predicted a 30-17, I think something of that in nature. And I fell for the okie doke of the Kansas City cruising in the regular season. And people were just speculating. And maybe I missed something in the last couple of years where guys like Dan Orlovsky were saying, oh, yeah, I haven't seen that play before when the Chiefs play in the playoffs. But I'm not going to fall for that again. And I mean, based on the last couple of years, my emotions have been rather dead, not just during the regular season, but even in the playoffs and even in this playoff run. I got a little maybe excited, like everybody was saying, my nerves are starting to come in leading up to this AFC Championship game. Maybe I got a little excited during our playoff game, our playoff preview for this game. But as it led up to game time, I was more, even keeled. Like, okay, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, oh well, it's same old story again. I don't know how I'm going to be, except for games where we're playing our division rivals, because we want to be able to, talk trash and stick it to them when they think they're going to surpass us and they don't every year for the last 5 years. We can hang our head on, 5 AFC East championships, whatever. Other than those games, I don't see myself really getting much excited. Even when we play the Chiefs in the regular season, even when we qualify for the playoffs, short of a 1 seed, of clinching a 1 seed, I doubt I'm going to really be excited for this team until I see the clock reach 0-0 in a game against the Chiefs in the playoffs, when we're in the lead.
What's next?
I don't know. How do we get excited about anything else until that happens?
No, listen.
Last year at the high mark. It's the last year high mark. We just have to be excited that maybe that's the end of the curse. We go to the new stadium. We win in the new stadium. I don't know.
Here's the thing, guys. Here's the thing. I will give you your dose of optimism here to go, because if the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl at this point, it's going to be one of the greatest stories in sports. Like, if they win the Super Bowl, actually, like, legitimately, it's one of the great sports stories we have left in the United States of America. So if it's going to happen, walk with me here. If you believe in fate, if you believe in destiny, if you believe in any of these things, just walk with me here. The Bills right now are 0-4 against the Kansas City Chiefs. We know that. The Chiefs are on the verge of winning their 3rd straight Super Bowl. So could be going into next season on the verge of their 4th straight Super Bowl. We know what that would mean, guys, if it comes down to Kansas City winning 4 straight Super Bowls. Like, we know what we would hear for the rest of our lives. Like, the stakes are immense next year. The 1 seed is the goal. You get that 1 seed. It doesn't guarantee you win. What it guarantees you is the chance to put Highmark Stadium out, to retire Highmark Stadium, the current version, the Ralph Wilson Stadium, Rich Stadium, whatever you want to call it. To winning
the AFC Championship.
Winning the AFC Championship and finally beating the Kansas City Chiefs. If that's not, if you believe destiny, fate, anything like that.
We thought destiny was calling us this season. We've had all the hype videos, all the Al Pacino and the miracle speeches saying this is our time, screw them, it's not their time anymore. Look what happened.
But think about the terms I just set for you. Then think about the fact that this was supposed to be the reset year. They're going to get all this cap room. They're going to add to this roster. It's going to be a better team going into next year. The challenge is not Kansas City falling off. The challenge is raising your level to Kansas City. You are right fucking there. you have to push through and pull levers and do things that you haven't done in the past.
question is, do you believe they're capable of doing that?
Yes, because I think the key to it is getting more fucking talent on the team. Von Miller, healthy Von Miller maybe gets them past in 13 seconds.
Wasn't
Emmanuel Acho right the whole time? We don't have the talent as at this moment to compete.
I tell you what, I feel a lot better if Max Crosby's on the team in that game next year.
Well, yeah, Max Crosby is a possibility. The Browns have
though.
already said that they're not willing to trade Myles Garrett, so we can cross that off of the wish list.
I'll believe that one.
What type of talent actually gets them over the top? It's not anybody offensively. Like offensively, they scored 30 points.
No,
a game
it's defensively.
But
It's
there's only
defensively
two
for
types
sure.
of players that can make that ultimate difference. You either need a premier pass rusher that is going to be able to get to the quarterback on a 4-man rush. So it has to almost be a Max Crosby or Myles Garrett, or else it's not going to be somebody good enough. Or that's another one. Or it needs to be a shutdown corner to pair with Benford. That's like a Revis or something like that. See, like my biggest thing is this: I would love to have either of those guys, but those are $20 million a year type players that you would need that type of production. And you're not going to luck into drafting something like that at like pick 29 or whatever, or pick 30. So you're not going to draft that most likely. So then the only other alternatives you have to get that are making a trade or getting something in free agency. Most likely in free agency, you're not going to have the money to get that big of a spending spree, and you're probably not getting the player of the caliber you need to do it. So then you're just going to set your cap up in a worse situation down the line. So then you have to trade for it. But if you're going to trade for it, you're probably giving up 2 first-round picks. So then you're in a situation where you need that person to be that player that you're praying that they are, or then you have no ability to build around Josh Allen as he enters his 30s.
I think they have. I don't think it's going to take 2 firsts to get Max Crosby. First of all, I think that bidding will be
get Max Crosby, get T. Higgins, get a shutdown corner. That's all we need.
I think the free agency this year will be a lot of filling and plugging holes where at the point where it's adding to the depth. Don't expect the big flashes from there. But they talked about needing top end talent today. They said we need one of those guys, and they have identified it in the past with the Diggs trade and spot where they need with the Von Miller signing. The Diggs trade. I mean, I'm not gonna. It went poorly. I'm not gonna say the Diggs trade was a bad decision. The Von Miller decision, yes, it didn't work out because of injury though. If the guy played to his ability and what we expected and could stay that way, it would have worked out. Ideally, you would have think at least. So I think that they've identified in those moments where they can take big swings, guys that have helped the team. And I think they're in an opportunity to do that again this year. I don't see why they wouldn't take another shot at it.
Here's a big question for you guys. And a lot of people, when they see the defense struggle against Kansas City, they get mad. And the first thought is blame coaching. How much of this performance against Kansas City do you blame on coaching versus lack of guys on the defense?
My biggest issue is the defensive line.
I think in the past, I would get mad at the defense because they performed as a top 2 to 3 unit, and they would just fall apart against Kansas City. Like you would see a defense that was DVOA number 1, DVOA number 2 or 3. And then in the playoffs against Kansas City, they're allowing 35 points. And you're like, how is this unit that had 50 sacks this year and all these takeaways suddenly fall apart?
I think Joe Marino said it best. This defensive line has a bunch of Robins, and we need a Batman.
Yeah, like this team this year, I really don't think this defense was really talented. And I feel like what do you expect out of a coach with this group of guys against Kansas City? Like that's why I can't blame coaching, because I just think they were honestly, if you looked at Kansas City talent versus Bills talent, is there a huge gap? Probably not a huge gap. But beyond Mahomes and Kelsey, you have Chris Jones, you have Justin Reed, you have Trent McDuffie. The Bills really only have Josh Allen, James Cook, and then you could say like Taron Johnson, like because Benford was hurt in this game. Like they're like we talk like Bernard's the guy, but Bernard's not what Bills fans think he is. Milano is a good player, but he's not what he was. Like the defensive line does not generate pressure at nearly a high enough rate. Like Greg Rousseau is a good player. He is not a top 10 defensive end who is getting high pass rush in big moments. So despite what other Bills content creators might tell you, I think the over exaggeration and the overhyping of this defensive line was in the preseason was one of the craziest things I've ever heard. So before the year, Jake, you and I talked about this. We talked about where's this Bills defense going to line up. And I said my hot take for this year is that the Bills defense is not going to be a top 7 or 8 unit. I said they're probably going to be 9 to like 13, like a little bit above average, but not really good. I would say that's what we saw this year.
Yeah, I agree.
I think a lot of that is just because coaching was good enough to get even that out of them. I think if you had another defensive coordinator running this defense, this Bills unit would have been a bottom 10 unit in the league, talent-wise. And what I will be interested in next year, in this offseason, are you going to see them implement more man-to-man elements going forward? The fact that in the playoffs against Baltimore and Kansas City, they went man-to-man.
Yeah.
That tells me they're trying to become more versatile and they're trying to be able to switch things up. I think changes are coming for how the Bills want to defend teams in big moments, because I think the Bills thought if they went man-to-man that maybe they would have a chance to confuse Mahomes a little bit more.
And
but when Pittsburgh goes down,
yeah,
you're just screwed. Like Kyrie Elam is horrible at this point. Like you got to call it what it is.
And that's Benford's skill level allows you to have that pivot. McDermott talked about it today. My biggest issue, and it's you said what we talked about for the season. I said I think I have higher hopes for this unit because I thought there's a potential for the defensive line to be better than they were last year. They weren't better than last year. They were maybe marginally better, but not what you need to win not a game-wrecking front that you need to win Super Bowls. And there's not a guy that can go out there and make a play like Chris Jones can on your side of defense. Chris Jones is a singular force, but the Bills don't have a guy even close to that tier. So that's where I would start. I don't know about you guys. Partham, let's get your final thoughts here, Mike. If you have anything else, then let's get out of here. We'll be back next week to give more of a off-season preview going forward.
All right, since this is the last post-game edition for a while, I just want to empty the clip here up because talking about all the things that went wrong this game, one of them was missed tackles. I think they had 13 missed tackles or something to that effect, and they had 12 combined in the previous 2 games. So, as in the words of Lombardi, everybody was just grabbing.
Everybody grabbing out there. Nobody tackling. Just grabbing, everybody. Grab. Nobody tackling.
So there's something to work on next season. But I'd say no matter what we're blaming the loss on here, I think it's clear that we're all pretty pissed off to Pistivity.
Oh, we're pissed off, man. There's no doubt about it. Pissed off to the highest of Pistivity.
It's so stupid.
But at the end of the day, however we explain it, defeat is still odious.
Defeat, no matter how excused or discounted or explained, is still odious.
And that's all I have to say.
That was beautiful.
Well said. Will you take us home with one more?
Do we have to?
Yes, of course.
All right,
go
ahead.
No matter what.
Let's go Bills.
Bills, folks.